Prosperity and abundance through the Most High Elohim. I am Mrs.Melanin Reigns, and in today's video, I want to highlight the differences between the divine feminine and the dark or wounded feminine. So when you see the word verses, I do not want to make it as if it's some type of competition. However, I was guided to highlight the differences between these two as I embarked upon my own journey. I created this list back in April, the 3rd of April to be exact, and I'm finally getting an opportunity to share it with you all. So I'm probably not going to do all of the list, but I will cover in between, like, let's say 5 to 7 of the bullet points, or maybe even up to 10 of them. So the first difference between the divine feminine and the wounded feminine is the divine feminine transmutes her trauma, okay? The wounded or dark feminine weaponizes trauma. So when I say the divine feminine transmutes trauma, that means with all of her experiences, with her childhood trauma, with the mistreatment she's experienced, with the hardship she's experienced, the divine feminine uses that to tap into not only her own healing, but to aid others in healing as well, okay? The wounded feminine weaponizes trauma. So this is like the energy of, okay, well, men always do this to me, so I might as well do this to men. Generalizing based upon your experiences. It's one of those hurt people dynamics, whereas the divine feminine is hurt people also heal people or help to heal people. The second difference between the divine feminine and the wounded feminine that I would like to highlight is that the divine feminine magnetizes men, money, and material naturally. She doesn't have to go out of her way to do these things. She doesn't have to she doesn't have to use manipulation in order to magnetize men, money, or material. Okay, she's just in her natural essence. Men want to do things for her. Men want to serve her, and not in a way where you're worshiping a person, but pretty much fulfilling her needs, helping her out in the spaces where she needs to be helped. Money is naturally magnetized to her. So she's literally one of those people who can live off of miracles. That is how the divine feminine is designed by the Most High, to live a miracle working life, to live a miracle attracting life, okay? So it's limited to nothing. And material, same thing with the material. She magnetizes it naturally. So with the dark or wounded feminine, this feminine energy manipulates men for money, material, and attention, okay? So when I'm speaking on that, it's the energy that we see taking over of just doing certain things in order to get things out of men. You literally do not have to do that. A lot of women don't know that. You don't have to manipulate anything when it comes to the opposite sex. You don't have to, opposite sex or gender, I know I used that wrong. When it comes to attracting money, when it comes to attracting attention, no, you are, as the feminine energy, you are naturally magnetic. Your femininity reigns from within you. It's innate. So anytime you see things being pushed to the outer or being emphasized in the outer sense, it's become masculine. So that specific point is the dark/wounded feminine manipulates men for money and attention and material. Okay. The next point I have here is the divine feminine doesn't need anything to fill voids, face her harsh truths. She doesn't need anything, not a substance, not a person, not a place, not a thing. She draws straight from the Most High. Okay, so when we are in that energy of maybe still fighting with certain addictions, myself included, when I was in those spaces, I did not know. Because I was ascending to becoming the divine feminine, embarking upon the journey of the divine feminine by working through that dark slash wounded energy. Okay? The dark slash wounded feminine uses substances, sex, material, etc. to cope. So that's materialism. That's any addiction. That's sexual promiscuity. All of those different things the dark slash wounded feminine needs to cope. Relationships. Anything outside of self is that dark slash wounded feminine energy. Okay, so the next one I have here is the divine feminine knows she's not perfect. She doesn't have to be perfect to be worthy. She actually, as she learns herself and as she can admit and be honest about her imperfections and her shortcomings, is actually a sense of vulnerability that not only aids her in her healing process, but it aids others as well. The dark slash wounded feminine ruminates in false perfection. I know I'm the bomb. I know I'm this. I know I'm that. When in reality, the dark slash wounded feminine is extremely insecure. Okay? And so none of these things are to be taken negative in the sense of to bring the next woman down. That's not the intention of this. I'm going to highlight the differences and then we'll get into something a little bit deeper. The divine feminine respects masculinity in its original state. I'll say that again. The divine feminine respects masculinity in its original state. So that means not trying to push past what masculinity actually is, not trying to alter or pretty much dominate over the masculine energy, but to appreciate it for what it is and to allow it to be what it is, okay? The dark slash wounded feminine tries to dominate or eliminate masculinity in its original state. Wants to bend it, fold it, make it more feminine, thinks the masculine energy is more safe in its feminine state. And I don't want to get into too many specifics with those things, but let me see. I can do a few more. The divine feminine sets healthy boundaries when hurt. So that's just pretty much learning what it is that you can do to not only protect your own energy, but make sure that you're not taken advantage of as well. You have to set healthy boundaries with everybody in your life. It's imperative to your own energy and theirs. Okay, you never want to become a doormat for people just because you love them. That is not divine feminine. Divine feminine is aware. She is able to set those boundaries because not only does it help her, it also helps others as well. The dark slash wounded feminine closes heart and becomes cold when hurt. So again, we'll go back to that example of, oh, well, I don't want to be in a relationship. I don't love men. I don't love this. I don't love that, whatever the case may be. The wounded feminine takes things personally and allows herself to overgeneralize things, not realizing that, it's not always going to be the same result once you make the shifts that you need to make. Okay, so I'm going to stop it there. We'll get into the rest of these at a later date. But the reason why I wanted to cover the differences between the divine feminine and the dark slash wounded feminine is because on my ascension, and I hope I can say that, ascension, as I'm growing on my path and on this journey, I realized that there was a long period of time where I was definitely in that dark and wounded feminine space, but I was calling myself divine feminine really because I knew where my heart and my spirit was. However, there is a clear difference between the dark and wounded feminine and the divine feminine. Now, some people never evolve past that dark / wounded feminine. And that needs to be, that's something that needs to be known. So it's imperative to point it out, because some people ruminate in that space and they stay there. What makes divine feminine also is because she learns herself in the midst of that dark space and in those wounded periods. She learns herself, and she learns what it is that can become like a gateway to her lower self. Basically, you learn about your lower self so it cannot overtake you, it cannot overpower you. Okay, as you're becoming. A lot of people think that you're supposed to deal with the dark and lower self and deal with your higher self. You learn your lower self so that it cannot be used against you. And hopefully that's understood. So it's not really a competition between the dark wounded feminine and the divine feminine in the sense of, an ego. I don't want to make it an ego thing. However, it is spiritual warfare. It definitely highlights spiritual warfare. And if you are not truly dedicated with the right mind, heart, and spirit, the alignment of the mind, heart, and spirit, to grow from there, to become the best and highest version of yourself that you are purposed to be, that dark and wounded space can really overtake you. And a lot of people live that out, So if you are divine feminine, I just want to remind you to know who you are, even when the world is showing you other versions of femininity. Remember, your femininity is really innate. It's not really about how your makeup is done. It's not about the bags you wear. It's not about the skirts and shirts you wear. It's really not about that. It's an innate power and quality that really helps you in all aspects of your life. For me, I like to relate things directly back to the Most High, because once I became anchored in the Most High, I then knew that, that false sense of balance, it's not what we think it is. A lot of people say that you got to be balanced in your lower self and your higher self. Absolutely not. When you learn your lower self, you allow those spaces, all the things you learned in those wounded spaces, to never overpower you. You allow those things to remind you of your weaknesses. So anything trying to come up against you cannot enter those doors. And that's important, because as a feminine energy, you are a gateway to a lineage. Like the masculine is a gateway to a legacy. You are a gateway to a lineage, and you must close the doors to all family iniquities if you are to truly heal from childhood trauma. If you want to put all the narcissistic energies of your family in the past and not pass them on to your children, it is imperative to learn those things, because you're not the first one dealing with those things. Other feminine energies in your family have dealt with those things. They've dealt with those familiar spirits. So in order to close those doors to family iniquities, it is important. Once you identify and you learn them, you don't play with those things. You don't play with those things. If you truly are divine feminine, you learn about them, you shut those doors to those family iniquities, and you close those doors permanently so that you and your children can truly inherit your birthright. Okay, I am Mrs.Melanin Reigns. I hope this video helps somebody. We'll talk soon.